Meantime, big businesses across the country issuing responses in support of protests taking place across the country following the death of George Floyd. But are the words and news releases enough? And this is an opportunity for me to get back to Darren Walker right now. Darren, you know, when you led this conversation off talking about really rethinking capitalism, and one of the questions I'd ask you is, in the private sector, we can talk about what the public sector and what the political class can do about this, but if you were the CEO of a large company today, what is it that you think you can do today?
Well, I've spoken with several friends who are CEOs of Fortune 100 companies, and my advice to them is throw out the old playbook. In a crisis like this, CEOs have traditionally done a series of very normative, predictable things. To issue a statement, to host a meeting of staff, particularly minority staff, to reach out to a group of African-American leaders on a conference call, and to have your corporate philanthropy write a few checks to the UNCF, the NAACP, and the Urban League. That playbook is not going to work this time, because more is going to be demanded of corporations, and more should be demanded, because corporations have a tremendous influence on how we live our lives. And the way in which the corporate economy has been structured has ultimately been harmful for our democracy, because it has contributed to a fraying of our economic infrastructure, the infrastructure that has always included a mobility escalator, because people moved up in wages and compensation and benefits. And what we've seen in recent years is that while we at the top, and I include myself in that group, we have benefited from policy. We've benefited from Fed policy. Who's benefited the most from Fed policy? People with assets. So if you've got real estate in New York City or the Hamptons or wherever, if you've got a broker, you benefited these years. But most Americans actually don't have access to that. And most Americans' wages over the last 2 decades have lagged behind the compensation that those of us that's at the top have received. And so we have in this country, as a result, a growing cynicism about our American ideals of opportunity and mobility. And that hopelessness is what we're seeing in our streets, that hopelessness which intersects with race. And that hopelessness is going to ultimately be harmful to the social fabric of this country, and we're seeing it. Hope is the oxygen of democracy. It is what makes it possible to be optimistic. We are asphyxiating optimism and hope by our economic policies and priorities that have privileged people like me at the expense of those workers who we now deem essential. But the essential workers I know have said, please stop running your commercials thanking us and pay us a wage that reflects your appreciation and that allows us to live with dignity.